Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. A number of years ago, I saw an ad for a flight sightseeing tour of Hawaiian Islands. And as part of this tour, they invited you to take the stick for a while and fly the plane. And I thought, well, that's exciting. I've always wanted to be an airplane pilot, so here's my chance to play. So I went down to the Kahului airport and met the flight instructor. And he put us in a little Cessna plane. And we're sitting on the runway, and he's playing with the dials and talking to the tower. And he says, well, now here's how you take off. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, here's how you take off. I said, well, I think I told you that I've never flown before. He said, that's all right. He said, here's how you take off. So he showed me what to do, and of course he assisted me. And we took the plane off. How cool is that? And we got up into the air. He said, here's how you stabilize, and here's how you control your altitude. And I actually flew the plane for a lot of the couple 3 hours we were in the air. We actually did a touchdown and takeoff on Molokai, and we flew back over the ocean and saw the whales and dolphins. It was amazing. Then we returned to the airport, and he said, well, here's how you land. I said, I'm not going to land this plane. He said, yeah, here's what you do. I'll take over toward the end. So he showed me what to do, and I guided the airplane. It was pretty windy, but it worked anyway. And at the last minute, he took the controls and he landed the plane with me. And as I walked away from that experience, I realized I had just received a very profound spiritual lesson. That this man, this pilot, saw potential in me. He saw me as a pilot. He didn't see me as a silly passenger. He saw me as a pilot who could actually take charge of this plane and fly it. And I realized that this lesson extrapolates to all of life. It's not just about flying little airplanes. It's about stepping into the vision of our magnitude rather than our smallness. Dale Carnegie said, give that person a fine reputation to live up to. What a great statement. Give that person a fine reputation to live up to. He was saying that when you speak highly of people, when you compliment them, when you talk about them as if they are a good, whole, empowered person, they will rise to that vision. And conversely, when we gossip about people, when we criticize them, when they talk about what they did wrong, they will actually shrink and become the person we've talked about. So you can literally create the people in your life by how you're seeing them and how you're speaking to them. There's a famous story in the annals of education in which a school teacher showed up on the first day of school in elementary school, and she looked at the roster of the students she'd been assigned, and she saw a number next to each of their names that indicated a very high IQ. 125, 138, 130. She said, wow, thank God I've finally been given an intelligent class. I'm going to do a lot of fun stuff with these kids. And so she gave them challenging projects. She gave them space to do what they wanted to do on their own. She encouraged them, and they shined. They excelled. It was the best teaching experience she'd ever had. At the end of the first semester, they all got A's. A few days later, the principal called her into his office and said, Miss Jones, how did you take the lowest functioning students in the school and turn them into geniuses? She said, what are you talking about? They're high functioning students. Look at their IQs, 138, 125, 130. The principal sat back and laughed. He said, Miss Jones, those are not their IQs. Those are their locker numbers. True story. So she was fooled by her misperception. That was really a true perception. Whereas no one else saw greatness in these kids, she did. And by expecting them to do well, by challenging them to do well, by moving them to do well, they did really well. They stepped into the truest potential because they They were matching the vision she was holding of them. Now, we've all had people in our lives who validated us and saw the greatness in us, don't we? When I was around 10 years old, my parents had a low income, so we moved into government subsidized housing, aka the projects, which is a pretty gnarly place to live. There's a lot of crime and drug abuse, and it was a bad environment for a kid to grow up. And coupled with that, I had a pretty bad self-image. I was very tall for my age. I was gawky. I had pimples and braces and didn't think much of myself. And around that time, I was invited to attend a brunch at my synagogue for kids, for teens. And I really had no reason to go, but something inside me said go. It was my first experience of what some people call the Holy Spirit, just saying, do this. It doesn't match what your thinking mind is thinking, but it does match what your soul is thinking. So I went. And at that brunch, I met a young rabbi who was the youth director. And he gave an impassioned speech. He spoke from his heart. And something in me lit up when he spoke. He was the first person I'd ever met who had a real relationship with God, a loving relationship. And his loving relationship with God extended to the kids in the group. And he took a liking to me, he took me under his wing, and he invited me to come back, and he invited me to run for president of the youth group, and I did, and I won. And he encouraged me to start giving speeches, which I did. He encouraged me to lead prayers, which I did. And within the year, I became an entirely new person. His vision of me was so lofty that I rose to meet it. He ended up helping me get into a Jewish college. I mean, that man changed my life because he saw something in me that hardly anyone else was seeing. And this is the power we have with our children. This is the power we have with our friends and our family and our spouse. Let's extrapolate this to all of relationship. So the only purpose of relationship is to see the goodness and the greatness and the wonder and the holiness in each other. Now that's quite different than the reasons we were taught we're supposed to find a partner. We thought we're supposed to find somebody who will make us feel great. And of course that's part of it. But the purpose of finding a partner is to practice holding the vision of divinity so you bring forth such magnificence in that partner that the magnificence has to go through you and you become magnificent too. Unfortunately, that's not often the case. Dysfunction and fear and judgment creep into relationships. One of my coaching clients told me that he can't remember a time in his childhood when his parents weren't fighting. How sad is that? And so he gained a negative image of relationship because his parents saw smallness, they saw problems with each other. But what if you and I took all of our relationships and we use them as a platform to practice seeing divinity, seeing wholeness? Tony Robbins has I think what he calls a 90-day relationship cure. I'll say 30 days. I think this worked for 30 days just fine. If you're having trouble in your relationship, or you're thinking about leaving, or you're fighting a lot, or there's a big empty gap between you, practice for 30 days just focusing on what's right with your partner. Remember why you got together with them. There's a reason you married them, the reason you got to be partners. At one point you saw their beauty and their brilliance and their funniness and their kindness and their cleverness and their compatibility with you. There's something inside you that stirred and said, oh, what a wonderful person this is. I want to be with this person. perhaps over the years, fear has crept in, judgment has crept in, a sense of separateness has crept in, and you start to shrink your partner to somewhat less than you originally saw them as being. There's a series of movies called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Well, honey, I shrunk you. I shrunk you in my perception. And so now I'm seeing you as problematic. I'm seeing you as a pain. I'm seeing you as somebody I don't want to be with. I'm seeing somebody who's fear, inspires fear in me instead of love. And behold why relationships fall apart, because we've shifted our vision. So what if you took this relationship challenge and said, for 30 days, I will suspend my judgments about my partner. I will suspend my judgments about the relationship. I will suspend my judgments about myself and the relationship. And I will just focus on what's right, or what's working, or what could work. I will validate my partner. I will thank them for taking out the garbage. I will thank them for picking me up at work. I will thank them for having a good idea about how to rearrange something in the living room or the garage. I don't have to be right. I will support my partner for being right. And at the same time, I will allow myself to be wonderful in the relationship. I will allow myself to be the person they were initially attracted to. I will allow them to be the person who said, I love you, and they meant it. And the truth is, when we say I love you in a relationship, that is far closer to the truth than when we say I'm upset about what's not working in our relationship or with you. So we can practice giving our relationship partner a fine reputation to live up to. And do not badmouth them to other people. That's how you dig a grave. That's how you work your way out of a good relationship, by complaining and gossiping and making the most of what's wrong with them instead of making the most of what's right with them. Now, Jesus was a great healer because he saw the potential for healing where other people saw their brokenness. This is how he healed. This is the secret of how Jesus Christ and any great healer heals. He could not be distracted by their diagnosis or their prognosis. He saw one diagnosis, wholeness. He saw one prognosis, destiny, divine destiny. And his greatest metaphysical teaching was this one. He said, you say there are yet 4 months until the harvest. But I say, look up. The fields are white with harvest now. This is his most powerful teaching, because he said, pierce beyond the veil of appearances. Do not be distracted by the illusion that this person is sick or dying. He said, see their, no matter what's going on with their body, see their absolute divinity, see their perfection, see them as whole beings created by a whole God that is all about health, not illness. Invite your patient or your client or your family member to rise to your vision of them. You heal with vision, not instruments. Instruments can be an avenue to express vision, but vision is what heals, and also vision is what hurts. And the day that we choose to shift our vision from what's not it to what is it, is the day our life changes. It's a transformational, monumental, critical turning point in our life when we choose to see perfection instead of brokenness and emptiness. Thoreau said, It's time for us to release the imprisoned splendor. Don't you love that phrase? To release the imprisoned splendor. Your spouse, your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends have a jewel inside of them. It's like a multifaceted, gleaming, multicolored diamond. And it's covered with muck, the muck of fear, the muck of judgments, yours and theirs. And when we begin to wipe those judgments away and let the diamond shine, you realize you're married to a magnificent spirit, or your friend is a magnificent spirit. And so are you. If you've allowed guilt or self-condemnation to sully your vision of yourself in relationships, stop it. Polish your own diamond, and you will have two magnificent spirits meeting. You will have an airplane pilot who released my imprisoned splendor. You will have an elementary school teacher who releases the imprisoned splendors of her students. You will have a healer who releases the Christed nature of your patients. My God, what an awakening. This is the awakening of a lifetime. Let's all do it, shall we? And let's transform all of our relationships. The purpose of today is to hold the highest vision of everyone we meet, even if it's a waitress or somebody who's repairing the road as you're driving by. See them not as somebody who's just going to work, but an angel, a divine being who is here to bless you and with whom you can have what the Course in Miracles calls a holy interaction, a holy relationship. What a day today will be. Wow. I want to remind you that May 11th is coming up soon. On that day, we'll begin our 8-week webinar series called Soul and Destiny, based on my new book coming out around the same time. We'll be talking about where do we come from and who are we really, and what is our soul, and how do we bring forth our soul into life, just like we're talking about today. We'll have some very profound ideas, Q&A, personal coaching within the context of the group, guided meditations, visualizations. It'll be a very high and holy 8 weeks. I hope you will join me. It starts May 11th. Go to my website, alancohen.com, and we'll have an adventure in soul and destiny to release our imprisoned splendor.